Welcome, and thank you for being here. Take a deep breath, slow down, and let the world's most ancient green cathedrals unfold around you. Today, we're journeying through 100 extraordinary facts about Earth's rainforests. Places so alive, so vast, and so deeply mysterious that even scientists are still discovering their secrets. Settle in, and let's explore together. Tropical rainforests are found in a broad, warm band that circles the Earth near the equator, stretching across parts of South America, Central Africa, Southeast Asia, and the islands of the Pacific. This region, often referred to as the tropics, receives a remarkably consistent amount of sunlight throughout the year, allowing plants to grow in an almost uninterrupted, steady rhythm. The warmth and moisture that define these forests create an environment where life moves slowly, continuously, and in great abundance. It is a place where the air itself feels thick and green, as though the atmosphere has been woven together with the leaves. The Amazon rainforest in South America is the largest tropical rainforest on Earth, covering an area of approximately 2.7 million square miles across 9 countries. The vast majority of this forest lies within Brazil, though significant portions stretch into Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. When you consider the sheer scale of this forest, it becomes something almost like a continent within a continent, a world of green that seems to go on endlessly in every direction. The Amazon Basin is so vast that it holds roughly 10% of all the species on Earth within its boundaries. Rainforests are divided into several distinct vertical layers, each one creating its own unique microenvironment with its own particular qualities of light, moisture, and temperature. These layers are commonly described as the forest floor, the understory, the canopy, and the emergent layer, and each one is home to a different community of plants and animals. As you move upward from the dim, damp floor through the dappled understory toward the sunlit canopy, the quality of the air and light changes in subtle but profound ways. This layered structure gives the rainforest an almost architectural quality, like a great living building with many floors, each one distinct and yet connected to all the others. The canopy of a tropical rainforest forms a nearly continuous ceiling of interlocking leaves and branches, typically sitting between 60 and 100 feet above the forest floor. This dense, living ceiling intercepts the vast majority of incoming sunlight, absorbing it before it can reach the layers below, which is why the forest floor remains so perpetually cool and shadowed. The canopy is often described by scientists as one of the most biologically rich environments on the planet, filled with a constant, quiet movement of insects, birds, and small mammals. When a gentle rain falls, the canopy catches much of it, releasing it slowly in a fine mist that drifts down through the layers below. Tropical rainforests receive an average of between 80 and 400 inches of rainfall every single year, which is the primary reason they are able to sustain such a dense and varied community of life. This rainfall does not always arrive in gentle, consistent showers. It can come in the form of long, steady downpours that last for hours and fill the forest with a deep, rhythmic sound. After a heavy rain in the Amazon, the rivers can rise noticeably within just a few hours, and the water flows slowly outward into the network of streams and channels that carry it toward the sea. The sheer volume of water that moves through a tropical rainforest in a single year is a quiet but remarkable fact of their existence. The Congo rainforest in Central Africa is the second largest tropical rainforest in the world, covering an area of approximately 1.3 million square miles across 6 countries. It sits in the heart of the African continent, centered around the Congo River, which is the second longest river in Africa and one of the deepest rivers anywhere on Earth. The forest is remarkably ancient, and many of its plant families have been present in this region for tens of millions of years, making it one of the longest continuously forested areas on the planet. There is a quiet, enduring quality to the Congo rainforest, a sense that it has been standing, growing, and breathing for longer than most of the landscapes we are familiar with. Rainforests are often referred to as the lungs of the Earth, a description that reflects their role in cycling enormous quantities of water vapor and oxygen through the atmosphere. Through a process called transpiration, rainforest trees release water vapor from their leaves into the air, and in a large forest like the Amazon, This creates what scientists call flying rivers, vast, invisible streams of moisture that move through the sky and eventually fall as rain hundreds, or even thousands of miles away. The Amazon alone is estimated to release around 20 billion tons of water into the atmosphere every single day, which is more water than even the Amazon River carries to the ocean. This invisible contribution to the water cycle is one of the quieter, but most significant ways that rainforests shape the climate of the entire planet. The soil beneath a tropical rainforest is, somewhat surprisingly, not particularly rich in nutrients. Most of the forest's nutrients are held not in the earth, but in the living bodies of the plants and trees themselves. When a leaf falls to the forest floor, it is broken down remarkably quickly by fungi, bacteria, and small invertebrates, and the nutrients it releases are almost immediately taken up again by the shallow roots of the surrounding trees. This rapid, closed-loop cycling of nutrients is one of the reasons why rainforests can support such abundant life, even on relatively thin, poor soils. It is a system of almost perfect efficiency, in which very little is wasted and everything is continuously reused. The emergent layer is the very top of the rainforest, where the tallest trees push their crowns above the rest of the canopy and stand alone in the full, direct sunlight. These emergent trees can reach heights of 200 feet or more, and their canopies are often shaped by the force of the wind into broad, spreading forms that allow them to capture as much sunlight as possible. From above, the emergent trees look like green islands rising out of a vast, undulating sea of lower canopy, and the spaces between them are often home to large birds that prefer to soar and glide rather than navigate the densely packed interior. The solitary grandeur of the emergent trees gives the rainforest skyline a gentle, irregular beauty that is quite unlike any other landscape on Earth. Tropical rainforests are believed to contain somewhere between 50 and 80% of all the plant and animal species on Earth, even though they cover only about 6% of the planet's total land surface. This extraordinary concentration of biodiversity is the result of millions of years of evolutionary history in a stable, warm, and productive environment. In a single hectare of Amazon rainforest, scientists have recorded more tree species than exist in the entire continent of North America. The sheer number and variety of living things in a tropical rainforest is one of those facts that grows more quietly astonishing the longer you sit with it. The forest floor of a tropical rainforest is a remarkably dim and quiet place, receiving less than 2% of the sunlight that falls on the canopy above. This deep shade means that only specially adapted plants, with unusually large or dark green leaves designed to capture every available photon of light, are able to survive and grow here. The floor itself is often carpeted with a deep layer of decomposing leaves and fallen wood, which gives it a soft, spongy texture underfoot and a rich, earthy scent that is quite unlike the smell of any other environment. Streams and small pools of water collect in the hollows of the forest floor, reflecting the faint green light that filters down from far above. The Amazon River, which flows through the heart of the world's largest rainforest, is the largest river in the world by volume of water, carrying approximately 1/5 of all the fresh water that flows into Earth's oceans. At its widest points, the river can stretch for several miles across, and during the wet season it floods outward into the surrounding forest for distances of up to 30 miles, creating a vast flooded forest environment called the Varzea. Fish swim through the submerged branches of the trees during this flooding season, feeding on fruits and seeds that fall from above, and the river and forest become temporarily, wonderfully intertwined. The slow, wide, brown waters of the Amazon carry with them an enormous amount of sediment that has been washed from the Andes Mountains far to the west. Epiphytes are plants that grow upon other plants, using trees and branches as their physical support rather than taking root in the soil, and they are one of the most characteristic and visually beautiful features of tropical rainforests. Orchids, bromeliads, mosses, ferns, and many other plant families have evolved to live as epiphytes, often creating small, self-contained ecosystems in the hollows of branches or in the cups formed by their own leaves. A single large tree in a tropical rainforest can host dozens of different epiphyte species simultaneously, draping it in layers of green, silver, and occasionally bright color. The relationship between an epiphyte and its host tree is generally one of quiet mutual tolerance, the epiphyte neither harming nor particularly benefiting the tree that holds it. The Daintree Rainforest in Queensland, Australia, is one of the oldest tropical rainforests in the world, with plant families that date back more than 135 million years, predating even the breakup of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. Walking through the Daintree feels like moving through a living museum of botanical history, where the ferns, palms, and primitive flowering plants growing alongside the path are related to species that once covered much of the ancient world. The forest grows right down to the edge of the Coral Sea, so that the green of the rainforest and the brilliant turquoise of the ocean can be seen at the same moment, separated by only a narrow strip of sand. The Daintree's extraordinary age gives it a particular quality of stillness and depth that is easy to sense even without knowing its history. Tropical rainforests are home to an estimated 40,000 plant species, a number that reflects the extraordinary diversity of leaf shapes, root structures, flowering strategies, and growth habits that have evolved in response to the complex challenges of life in this environment. Many of these plants have evolved highly specialized relationships with specific insects, birds, or other animals for the purposes of pollination or seed dispersal, creating intricate, interdependent networks that link species across the entire forest community. The sheer variety of leaf shapes alone in a tropical rainforest is visually remarkable, from leaves as small as a fingernail to leaves large enough to use as an umbrella, each one shaped by millions of years of adaptation to its particular position in the forest. The green of these leaves, in all its many shades from pale lime to deep emerald, creates a richness of color that no painter has ever quite managed to capture. The Southeast Asian rainforests, which stretch across Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Borneo, and Papua New Guinea, are among the most biologically diverse in the world, due in part to the complex archipelago of islands that allowed populations of plants and animals to evolve in isolation from one another over millions of years. The island of Borneo alone is home to an estimated 15,000 plant species, 3,000 species of trees, and more than 200 species of mammals, making it one of the most species-rich large islands on Earth. The forests of this region are characterized by the dominance of a tree family called the Dipterocarpaceae, whose tall, straight-trunked members form the primary canopy across vast areas, and whose winged seeds spiral slowly down through the forest air like tiny, elegant propellers. The richness of life in Southeast Asian forests reflects a long, complex history of geological movement, climate change, and evolutionary innovation. Rainforests have been home to human communities for tens of thousands of years, and many of the world's remaining rainforest regions are inhabited by indigenous peoples whose cultures, languages, and knowledge systems have developed in intimate relationship with the forest environment. In the Amazon Basin alone, there are estimated to be over 400 distinct indigenous peoples, each with their own language and deep knowledge of the plants, animals, and seasonal rhythms of their particular part of the forest. The botanical knowledge held by indigenous communities in the Amazon, knowledge of which plants can be used as food, medicine, or material, represents one of the most extensive and sophisticated systems of natural history that has ever been developed by human beings. This knowledge, accumulated over many generations of careful observation, continues to inform contemporary science in ways that are only beginning to be understood. The temperature within a tropical rainforest is notably stable throughout the year, typically hovering between 68 and 93 degrees Fahrenheit, with relatively little variation between seasons. This thermal stability is one of the key factors that allows such a vast diversity of species to exist in the rainforest, since many organisms have evolved to function within a very narrow temperature range and would struggle to survive in a more variable climate. The high humidity of the rainforest air, which often exceeds 80%, means that the temperature feels somewhat warmer than the numbers suggest, giving the forest a warm, enveloping quality at all hours of the day. Even at night, the dense canopy holds in warmth like a living blanket, so that the forest remains noticeably warmer than the open land around it. The process of photosynthesis, by which plants convert sunlight and carbon dioxide into sugar and oxygen, reaches an extraordinary scale in a tropical rainforest, where the combined leaf area of all the plants in a single acre of forest can be many times greater than the ground area beneath it. This vast photosynthetic surface absorbs enormous quantities of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and releases oxygen in return, making tropical rainforests one of the most significant carbon sinks on Earth. The Amazon rainforest alone stores an estimated 150 to 200 billion tons of carbon in the wood, leaves, and soil of the living forest, a quantity so large that it is difficult to fully comprehend. This stored carbon is held in place not by any mechanical system, but simply by the slow, continuous growth of the trees. The sounds of a tropical rainforest are among the most layered and complex of any natural environment, with the calls of birds, insects, frogs, and mammals blending into a continuous, shifting soundscape that varies in character from the forest floor to the canopy far above. Many of the sounds are produced by animals that are rarely or never seen, hidden in the dense vegetation or active only at particular times of day, so that the forest seems to be alive with voices whose owners remain invisible. Dawn in a tropical rainforest brings a particular crescendo of sound, as many bird species call simultaneously in the first light, creating a brief, intense chorus that gradually softens as the morning progresses. The quietest sounds of the forest, the drip of water from a leaf, the soft footfall of a large insect, the rustle of a branch settling under the weight of a resting bird, have a quality of intimacy that is easy to find soothing. The Tongass National Forest in southeastern Alaska is the largest temperate rainforest in the world, covering approximately 17 million acres of land across a region of mountains, fjords, and islands along the Pacific coast. Unlike tropical rainforests, temperate rainforests receive their heavy rainfall in a cooler climate, and the dominant trees here are massive conifers, Sitka spruce, western hemlock, and red cedar, that can live for hundreds of years and reach heights of over 200 feet. The forest floor in a temperate rainforest is thick with mosses and ferns that drape every surface in a continuous, soft layer of green and fallen trees, called nurse logs, become platforms on which whole communities of new plants establish themselves. The stillness and scale of old-growth temperate rainforest has a particular, almost ancient quality that is quite different from the warm exuberance of the tropics. The relationship between fig trees and the fig wasps that pollinate them is one of the most ancient and specialized symbiotic relationships in the natural world, and it plays a central role in the ecology of tropical rainforests on every continent where they exist. Each of the approximately 750 species of fig tree is pollinated by its own specific species of fig wasp, and neither can survive without the other. The wasp needs the fig to reproduce, and the fig needs the wasp to produce fertile seeds. This relationship is estimated to be at least 80 million years old, which means that figs and their wasps have been finding each other in the rainforest since long before most of the mammals we know today had evolved. The soft, sweet figs produced by these trees are a vital food source for hundreds of bird and mammal species throughout the world's tropical forests. Tropical rainforests play a profound role in regulating the climate, not just of the surrounding region, but of the entire planet, primarily through their influence on both the carbon cycle and the water cycle. The trees of the Amazon, Congo, and Southeast Asian rainforests together store more carbon than has been released by human industry in all of recorded history, effectively acting as a vast, living buffer against changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide. Through transpiration, these forests also release enormous quantities of water vapor into the atmosphere, influencing rainfall patterns across entire continents and, through complex atmospheric processes, affecting weather systems far from the forest itself. The climate-regulating function of rainforests is one of those quiet, background services that the Earth depends upon in ways that are not always visible, but are deeply significant. The understory of a tropical rainforest is a world of filtered green light, where plants and small trees grow in the gaps between the great trunks of the canopy trees and reach upward in search of the pale, diffuse illumination that reaches them from above. Many understory plants have developed unusually large, dark leaves to maximize the photosynthesis they can perform in these low-light conditions, and some species have leaves with a waxy or iridescent surface that helps them capture light from multiple angles. The understory is also home to a great many young trees that are waiting, sometimes for years or even decades, for a gap to open in the canopy above them, so that they can grow into the full sunlight. When a large canopy tree eventually falls, the burst of light that reaches the forest floor triggers a quiet, slow surge of growth in the waiting understory. The genus Heliconia, sometimes called lobster claws or wild plantains, produces some of the most visually striking flowers in the tropical rainforest, with large, waxy bracts in shades of red, orange, yellow, and green that are shaped to perfectly accommodate the curved bills of the hummingbirds that pollinate them. The flowers can persist for weeks at a time, and their vivid colors make them among the most noticeable splashes of brightness in the otherwise green interior of the forest. The small pools of water that collect in the hollows of Heliconia bracts become miniature aquatic ecosystems, home to mosquito larvae, small aquatic invertebrates, and even some species of frog that lay their eggs there. The relationship between Heliconia and its hummingbird pollinators is so close that the shape of the flower and the shape of the bird's bill have evolved together over millions of years. Cloud forests are a special type of tropical rainforest found on mountain slopes, where the air is consistently cool and moist, often draped in a persistent layer of cloud or mist that gives the trees a soft, otherworldly appearance. The combination of moisture and relatively low temperatures in these forests allows mosses, ferns, and orchids to grow in extraordinary profusion, covering every available surface, branches, trunks, rocks, and even other plants, in thick, cushiony layers of green. Some cloud forests, particularly in the Andes Mountains of South America and the mountains of Central America, are home to species found nowhere else on Earth, owing to the island-like isolation that each mountain peak provides. The quality of light in a cloud forest is gentle and diffuse, softened by the mist into an even, pearly glow that makes colors appear unusually vivid and clear. Strangler figs are among the most dramatic and ecologically important trees in tropical rainforests, beginning their lives as small epiphytes high in the canopy before sending roots downward that eventually enclose, and sometimes replace, the host tree around which they grow. When a strangler fig's seed germinates in the canopy, it first grows as an epiphyte for several years, sending down long aerial roots that eventually reach the forest floor and take hold in the soil. Over time, these roots thicken and fuse together around the trunk of the host tree, forming a cage-like structure that can persist long after the original host has decomposed away. The resulting hollow-cord strangler fig is one of the most architecturally remarkable living structures in the forest, a great, living column of interwoven roots that can eventually become entirely self-supporting. The tropical rainforests of Madagascar, which sits off the eastern coast of Africa, are home to a remarkable collection of plant and animal species found nowhere else on Earth, the result of the island's long geological isolation from the African mainland. Madagascar separated from the African continent approximately 160 million years ago, and the plants and animals that were carried along on this ancient island have had an extraordinarily long time to evolve in isolation. The lemurs of Madagascar, gentle, large-eyed primates that move through the forest with a slow, deliberate grace, are perhaps the most famous products of this isolation, but they represent only a small part of the island's extraordinary botanical and zoological uniqueness. Walking through the forests of Madagascar's eastern coast, one has the sense of moving through a world that followed its own evolutionary rules, separate from the rest of life's story. The Rio Negro, a major tributary of the Amazon River, carries water so dark it appears almost black, a color produced by tannins and other organic acids leached from decomposing vegetation along its banks. And this dark water creates a very different aquatic environment from the sediment-laden brown of the main Amazon channel. Where the dark Rio Negro meets the pale, sandy-colored Amazon River near the city of Manaus, the two bodies of water flow side by side for several miles without mixing, creating a striking visual boundary called the meeting of the waters that results from the differences in temperature, density, and flow speed between the two rivers. The dark, acidic waters of the Rio Negro are poor in nutrients, but home to a unique community of fish species that have adapted to these specific conditions over millions of years. The visual contrast of the two rivers flowing together and yet remaining separate is one of the quiet visual wonders of the Amazon Basin. Mangrove forests, which grow along tropical coastlines in the zone between land and sea, are technically a distinct ecosystem from inland rainforests, but share many of their qualities and are deeply connected to them through the movement of water, sediment, and species. Mangrove trees have evolved a remarkable set of adaptations that allow them to survive in saltwater and in soils with very little oxygen, including networks of aerial roots called pneumatophores that grow upward from the mud to gather oxygen directly from the air. These aerial root systems create an extraordinarily complex physical structure at the water's edge, providing shelter and nursery habitat for a vast community of fish, crabs, shrimp, and other aquatic animals. The roots of mangrove forests also hold shoreline sediments in place with quiet but enormous effectiveness, building and protecting coastlines in a way that has been ongoing for millions of years. The Brazil nut tree is one of the most ecologically significant and commercially important trees in the Amazon rainforest, and it has the unusual distinction of being almost entirely dependent on a single species of orchid bee for its pollination. The tree produces large, woody capsules roughly the size of a coconut, each one containing between 10 and 25 individual nuts arranged like orange segments inside a hard shell, and these capsules can weigh up to 5 pounds. The only animal strong enough to open these capsules in the wild is the agouti, a medium-sized South American rodent with exceptionally sharp and powerful teeth, which buries many of the nuts it extracts for later consumption, and in doing so, inadvertently plants the next generation of Brazil nut trees. This three-way relationship between tree, bee, and agouti is a beautiful example of the intricate interdependencies that run through every part of the rainforest ecosystem. The Pantanal, which borders the Amazon Basin in western Brazil and extends into Bolivia and Paraguay, is the world's largest tropical wetland, and during the wet season it becomes a vast, flooded landscape where forest and water are seamlessly blended together. Unlike the upland Amazon rainforest, the Pantanal experiences a dramatic seasonal flooding cycle that transforms the landscape twice each year. First flooding under several feet of water as the rains arrive, then slowly drying out as the dry season progresses. This flooding and drying rhythm creates a remarkably productive environment, concentrating fish, birds, and large mammals in ways that make wildlife viewing here particularly vivid. The slow, silver waters of the flooded Pantanal, reflecting the blue sky and the silhouettes of palm trees, create one of the most quietly beautiful landscapes in the Americas. The Amazon River Basin contains approximately 10% of all the fresh water that runs off the surface of the Earth in any given year, collecting rainfall from a catchment area of approximately 2.7 million square miles that includes the slopes of the Andes Mountains to the west and the Brazilian highlands to the south. This extraordinary volume of water flows generally eastward across the continent, descending from the mountains through thousands of tributaries before joining the main river channel and continuing toward the Atlantic Ocean. The river's discharge into the ocean is so large fresh water can be detected in the Atlantic more than 100 miles offshore, and the sediment it carries has built up a vast delta at the river's mouth over millions of years. The Amazon River has no significant bridges across its main channel, partly because the river is so wide and deep that bridge construction would be extraordinarily challenging. Tropical forests store their carbon not just in the wood of their living trees, but also in the root systems, the fallen wood, the leaf litter, and the soil itself, creating a multi-layered carbon reservoir of remarkable depth and complexity. The largest trees in the Amazon, those with trunks more than 3 feet in diameter, are estimated to store roughly half of all the carbon held in the entire forest, even though they represent only about 1% of all the individual trees. Some of these large trees may be several hundred years old, and they have been accumulating carbon in their wood throughout that entire time, growing slowly and steadily into the enormous living structures they have become. The oldest and largest trees of any rainforest are, in this sense, also some of the most ancient and enduring carbon storage systems on the planet. The Valdivian temperate rainforest of southern Chile and a small part of Argentina is one of the most isolated forest ecosystems in the world, separated from other temperate rainforests by the vast expanses of the Pacific Ocean, the Atacama Desert, and the Andes Mountains. This isolation has given rise to a remarkably distinctive flora, including several plant families found nowhere else on Earth, including the Alersa tree, a slow-growing conifer that can live for more than 3,600 years and reach heights of nearly 200 feet. The forests of the Valdivian region receive heavy rainfall from Pacific storms and are draped in the same luxuriant moss and epiphyte growth that characterizes temperate rainforests everywhere, giving them a deep, green, cathedral-like quality. The Alersa forests in particular have an atmosphere of ancient, enduring calm that is easy to sense even from photographs. The water cycle within a tropical rainforest is essentially a closed loop, in which rainfall is absorbed by the soil and plants, taken up by roots, transported through the trees, and released back into the atmosphere through transpiration from the leaves, from which it eventually condenses again and falls as rain, completing the cycle. This internal recycling of water means that a significant portion of the rainfall in a tropical forest region is generated by the forest itself, rather than arriving entirely from outside the system. Scientists studying the Amazon have estimated that as much as half of the rainfall in the interior of the basin is derived from water that was previously transpired by the forest, then blown inland by the prevailing winds and deposited as rain farther into the continent. The forest is, in this sense, not merely a passive recipient of rainfall, but an active participant in creating its own climate. The pitcher plants of Southeast Asian rainforests, particularly those in the genus Nepenthes, are among the most architecturally elaborate plants in the world, producing large, liquid-filled vessels that are designed to trap and digest insects and other small animals as a supplemental source of nutrients. These pitchers develop from the tips of the plant's leaves and come in an extraordinary variety of shapes, colors, and sizes. Some are no larger than a thimble, while others can grow large enough to hold several liters of liquid. The interior surfaces of the pitcher are coated with a waxy, slippery material that causes insects to lose their footing and fall into the digestive fluid below, and the rim of the pitcher is often decorated with nectar glands and intricate patterns that guide insects toward the opening. The slow, quiet operation of these living traps is one of the more remarkable examples of botanical ingenuity in the natural world. The forests of the Indo-Malayan archipelago, including Borneo, Sumatra, and the Malay Peninsula, are dominated in many areas by tall trees of the Dipterocarp family, which are among the tallest tropical trees in the world and produce a particularly valuable and dense hardwood timber. These trees have an unusual reproductive strategy called mast fruiting, in which all the trees of a given species across a large area produce fruit simultaneously, at intervals of several years, flooding the forest floor with seeds in such abundance that seed-eating animals cannot possibly consume them all. This synchronous fruiting, which is thought to be triggered by subtle climatic cues, ensures that many seeds survive to germinate and establish new trees. In the years between masting events, the forest canopy of a Dipterocarp forest is relatively quiet, dominated by the steady, even-textured green of millions of undisturbed leaves. The soils of the Amazon basin include a remarkable type known as terra preta, or dark earth, which is found in patches across the region, and is distinguished by its unusually high carbon content, fertility, and depth. Terra preta is believed to have been created by indigenous peoples over thousands of years through the deliberate addition of charcoal, bone, and organic material to the naturally poor tropical soil, effectively building up a rich, productive growing medium where none had existed before. Some patches of terra preta have been found that are more than 8,000 years old, suggesting that human management of the Amazonian landscape began far earlier than was previously understood. The deep, dark color of terra preta soil, and the extraordinary richness of the plant life it supports even today, is a quiet testament to the long history of human relationship with this forest. The buttress roots of many large tropical rainforest trees are among the most visually dramatic features of the forest floor, forming great, thin, wing-like flanges of wood that radiate outward from the base of the trunk and can extend many feet in every direction. These roots develop because the shallow, nutrient-poor soils of tropical forests do not offer a deep anchoring substrate for trees, and the buttresses serve to spread the tree's weight over a larger area, providing stability that deep roots cannot offer in these conditions. The spaces between buttress roots are often large enough for a person to stand in comfortably, and they create a series of small, sheltered chambers at the base of the tree that are used by animals, fungi, and smaller plants as microhabitats. The smooth, pale wood of the buttress roots, often contrasting with the darker bark of the trunk above, has a smooth, sculpted quality that looks almost like the work of a carpenter rather than the slow growth of a tree. The Xingu River in Brazil, a major southern tributary of the Amazon, flows through a region of remarkably clear water, quite unlike the muddy main channel of the Amazon, and its rocky, well-oxygenated waters are home to an extraordinary diversity of freshwater fish species, many of which are found in no other river in the world. The Xingu's clarity is a result of the ancient, stable geology of the Brazilian shield through which it flows, which releases very little sediment into the water, and its rapids and waterfalls keep the water well oxygenated and cool. Scientists have described the Xingu as one of the most diverse rivers on Earth in terms of freshwater fish species per unit area, and new species continue to be described by researchers working in its quieter pools and among the submerged boulders of its faster reaches. The visual quality of the Xingu's clear water, where the river bottom is visible and the fish can be watched going about their daily routines, has a particular, transparent beauty. Lianas, which are woody climbing vines, are one of the most characteristic structural elements of tropical rainforests, draping from tree to tree in great loops and festoons that can stretch for hundreds of feet through the canopy. There are estimated to be around 2,500 species of liana in tropical forests worldwide, and they play an important ecological role in connecting different parts of the canopy, providing pathways for animals and dispersing the weight of their own foliage across multiple tree supports. Some lianas can live for hundreds of years, and their woody stems can grow to be several inches in diameter, taking on a gnarled and twisted character that reflects their long, winding growth through the ever-shifting forest structure. The sight of long, looping lianas draped between the trunks of tall trees in the slanted afternoon light of a tropical forest is one of the enduring visual images of the rainforest environment. The Atlantic forest of eastern Brazil, known in Portuguese as the Mata Atlântica, is a tropical and subtropical forest system that once extended along the entire Atlantic coast of Brazil and into parts of Argentina and Paraguay. It is considered one of the most biologically diverse and most threatened forest regions in the world, with a remarkable number of plant and animal species found nowhere else on Earth concentrated within its remaining patches. The Atlantic forest is geographically separate from the Amazon and has developed its own distinctive community of species over millions of years of relative isolation, including many striking plants and animals that bear little resemblance to their Amazonian counterparts. The fragments that remain of this forest, many of them in steep coastal mountains, have a lush, mossy, deeply green quality that reflects the heavy rainfall they receive from storms crossing the Atlantic Ocean. The relationship between ants and acacia trees in Central American rainforests is one of the most studied examples of mutualism, a relationship in which both species benefit. In the plant kingdom, acacia trees provide hollow thorns as nest sites and specialized food bodies rich in proteins and fats for the ants that live on them, and in return the ants aggressively defend the tree against herbivores, competitors, and even encroaching vines, patrolling the branches and removing any vegetation that comes into contact with their tree. The Azteca ants that tend many Cecropia trees in the Amazon perform a similar function, living in the hollow internodes of the tree's stems and rushing out to defend the tree at the slightest disturbance. These interlocking networks of mutualistic relationships between plants and insects are part of what gives the tropical rainforest its extraordinary resilience and productivity. The giant water lily, Victoria amazonica, is native to the shallow lakes and slow-moving waters of the Amazon Basin and produces some of the largest leaves of any plant in the world, circular pads of green that can reach up to 10 feet in diameter and are supported from below by a network of radiating ribs that create a structure of remarkable engineering elegance. The underside of a Victoria amazonica pad is a warm reddish-purple color, and it is lined with sharp spines that protect it from grazing fish, while the upper surface is smooth, flat, and waxy, with upturned edges that keep it afloat and stop water from pooling on top. The flowers of this water lily open white in the evening and close the following morning. then reopen the second evening in a deep pink color before fading and sinking below the water. The sight of a lake covered in these vast green pads, their white and pink flowers floating among them in the warm tropical evening, is one of the quieter visual splendors of the Amazon. The Orinoco River basin of Venezuela and Colombia supports a vast area of tropical forest and grassland, and it includes one of the world's most significant deposits of blackwater river systems. Rivers whose waters are stained dark by dissolved organic matter from the surrounding forest. The Orinoco itself is the third longest river in South America, flowing in a great arc across northern South America before emptying into the Atlantic Ocean through a wide, complex delta. In its upper reaches, near the border with Brazil, the river passes close to the headwaters of the Amazon, and there is actually a natural waterway called the Cosiquiara Canal that connects the two great river systems, a geographic curiosity that has fascinated travelers and naturalists since the 18th century. The slow, dark, reflective surface of the Orinoco in its quieter reaches has a particular, meditative quality. The dipterocarp trees of Borneo and the Malay Peninsula can reach heights of over 200 feet, making them among the tallest tropical trees in the world and giving the forests they dominate a particularly grand, vertical character. These trees produce a thin, pale timber that has been harvested commercially for decades, but their ecological importance goes far beyond their timber value. They are the primary food source for a wide range of animals during their periodic masting events, and the structural foundation on which hundreds of other species depend. The root systems of large dipterocarps are often associated with mycorrhizal fungi that form a close partnership with the tree roots, extending the roots' reach and providing them with additional water and nutrients in exchange for sugars from the tree. This underground fungal network, invisible from above, is one of the quiet foundations on which the entire canopy above depends. The Amazon rainforest has been continuously forested for at least 55 million years, making it one of the most ancient and long-enduring ecosystems on the surface of the Earth. During this vast span of time, the climate of the region has shifted repeatedly, including during ice ages when the Amazon may have contracted into smaller, isolated refugia, but the forest has always expanded back to cover its current extent as conditions warmed and moistened again. Each of these cycles of contraction and expansion is believed to have played a role in generating biodiversity, as populations of plants and animals isolated in separate refugia evolved independently before coming back into contact with one another. The immense age of the Amazon forest gives it a kind of accumulated ecological wisdom, a depth of complexity and interconnection that can only be built up over extraordinarily long periods of time. Orchids are the largest family of flowering plants in the world, with approximately 28,000 known species, and tropical rainforests, particularly in the Americas, are their center of diversity and abundance. Many tropical orchids grow as epiphytes in the canopy and understory, anchoring themselves to branches with specialized adhesive roots and displaying flowers of remarkable variety and intricacy, often designed with extraordinary precision to attract and guide specific pollinating insects or birds. Some orchid species produce flowers that mimic the appearance, texture, and even the scent of female insects, so convincingly that male insects attempt to mate with them, inadvertently picking up pollen in the process. The quiet biological ingenuity represented by orchid diversity is one of the more subtle and wonderful aspects of tropical forest life. The flooded forests of the Amazon, called Agopo when flooded by blackwater rivers and Várzea when flooded by whitewater rivers, represent one of the most unusual and productive forest habitats in the world. Places where fish swim among the trunks of trees and gather beneath the canopy to feed on falling fruits, nuts, and seeds. During the flood season, which can last for months, these forests may lie under several meters of water, and the trees that inhabit them have evolved remarkable physiological strategies for surviving extended periods of root inundation, including the ability to absorb oxygen through their roots from the surrounding water. The fish of the flooded Amazon forest include many species that feed almost exclusively on fruits and seeds during the flood season, and these animals play an important role in dispersing the seeds of many forest trees throughout the basin. The visual experience of a flooded Amazon forest, water and trees together, fish and birds sharing the same environment, is one of the more quietly extraordinary sights in nature. The tapir, which is the largest land mammal native to South America, is one of the most important seed dispersers in the Amazon and other neotropical rainforests, consuming large quantities of fruit and depositing the intact seeds at considerable distances from the parent tree. Tapirs resemble large, heavy-bodied pigs with a short, flexible proboscis, and they move through the forest in a slow, deliberate manner, following well-worn trails between feeding areas and water. They are most active during the cooler hours of night, when the forest is quiet and the air is heavy with moisture, and they are known to travel considerable distances along forest rivers and streams in search of salt licks and aquatic vegetation. The tapir's role in the rainforest ecosystem goes far beyond what is immediately apparent from observing the animal itself. Its movements carry seeds and nutrients across large areas of forest, quietly shaping the composition of the plant community. The Amazon River is home to more species of freshwater fish than any other river system in the world, with an estimated 3,000 or more species already described and scientists believing that many more remain to be discovered in the river's more remote and unexplored tributaries. This extraordinary fish diversity includes forms as varied as tiny, jewel-colored tetras, no larger than a thumbnail, huge arapaima that can grow to more than 8 feet in length, and the various species of piranha, which are actually omnivorous fish that play an important scavenging role in the river ecosystem. The peacock bass, with its bold geometric color patterns, and the stingray species that have migrated from the ocean into the river system millions of years ago and now live their entire lives in fresh water, are among the many quietly remarkable members of the Amazon's fish community. The diversity of forms and adaptations represented by Amazonian fish is one of the most compelling testaments to the evolutionary creativity that long-term ecological stability can produce. The Monteverde Cloud Forest Reserve in Costa Rica sits at approximately 5,000 feet above sea level in the mountains of the Continental Divide, and it is one of the most celebrated examples of cloud forest in the world. The forest is draped almost continuously in mist and light rain, and every surface, tree trunks, branches, rocks, and the forest floor, is covered in a thick, continuous layer of mosses, liverworts, and ferns that gives the entire landscape a soft, padded, deeply green appearance. Monteverde is home to more than 400 species of birds, 100 species of mammals, and an extraordinary diversity of orchids and other epiphytic plants that thrive in the cool, moisture-saturated air. The quality of the light in this forest is particularly distinctive. A soft, silvery diffusion that makes the colors of the mosses and ferns appear luminous. Tropical rainforests are home to more species of beetles than any other group of animals on Earth, and beetles as a whole represent roughly 1/4 of all known animal species, a fact that led the biologist J.B.S. Haldane, when asked what could be inferred about God from a study of his creation, to remark that the creator appeared to have an inordinate fondness for beetles. The tropical rainforest beetle fauna includes species ranging from the enormous and elaborately armored Goliath beetles of Africa, which can weigh as much as a small mouse, to tiny bark beetles no larger than a grain of rice that live their entire lives beneath the surface of a single fallen log. Many rainforest beetles are pollinators, feeding on pollen and nectar, and incidentally carrying pollen between flowers, while others are decomposers that break down fallen wood and leaf litter into the humus that forms the basis of the forest floor. The quiet, industrious presence of beetles in every layer and every corner of the rainforest is one of the less celebrated, but most ecologically fundamental aspects of these ecosystems. The leafcutter ants of the neotropical rainforest are among the most sophisticated agricultural organisms on the planet, cutting pieces of fresh leaf from the canopy and carrying them back to their underground colonies, where the leaf material is used to cultivate the fungus that provides the colony's primary food source. Leafcutter ant colonies can contain millions of individuals organized into distinct castes of workers, soldiers, and reproducers, each performing a specific role in the collective life of the colony. The trails of leafcutter ants are a common and quietly compelling sight on the forest floor. Long processions of workers carrying their green leaf fragments overhead like tiny green sails, following chemical trails worn into smooth, bare paths through the leaf litter. The underground fungal gardens of a mature leafcutter colony can be as large as a small car, and they represent the culmination of a farming relationship between ants and fungi that began approximately 50 million years ago. The cloud forests of the Monteverde region in Costa Rica and similar montane forests throughout the neotropics are the primary habitat of the resplendent quetzal, a bird so striking in its appearance that it was considered sacred by both Mayan and Aztec civilizations, and whose long, iridescent green tail feathers were used in the ceremonial headdresses of rulers and priests. The male quetzal's tail feathers can extend up to 3 feet beyond the body during the breeding season, and their color shifts between brilliant emerald green and shimmering gold, depending on the angle of the light. The quetzal feeds primarily on wild avocados, swallowing them whole and passing the large seed through its digestive system intact, making it an important seed disperser for avocado and other lauraceous trees in the cloud forest. The sight of a quetzal perched quietly in the misty morning light of a cloud forest is one of the most quietly magnificent visual experiences available in the natural world. The Amazon Basin was long thought by scientists to be largely unchanged by human activity before the arrival of Europeans in the 16th century, but archaeological research over the past several decades has fundamentally revised this understanding. Evidence now suggests that large, complex societies inhabited much of the Amazon Basin for thousands of years before the European contact period, building extensive systems of earthworks, causeways, and agricultural fields, and managing the forest in ways that substantially shape the composition of the plant community across vast areas. The unusually high concentration of economically useful plants, fruit trees, nut trees, and fiber plants, in certain parts of the Amazon is now thought to reflect centuries or millennia of deliberate cultivation and management by indigenous peoples. The modern Amazon forest is, in this sense, not entirely wild in the traditional meaning of the word, but is in many places a cultural landscape shaped by a long history of human stewardship. The Borneo pygmy elephant, the smallest subspecies of Asian elephant, moves through the lowland rainforests of northern Borneo in small family groups, following ancient trail systems through the forest that may have been used by elephants for hundreds of generations. These animals, which are more gentle in temperament than their mainland relatives, feed on a wide variety of plants, and play an important role in shaping the structure of the forest through their feeding, trampling, and movement. Because elephants transport seeds in their digestive systems over long distances and create clearings in the forest that allow light to reach the floor and regenerate dense undergrowth, they are considered a keystone species, one whose presence has an effect on the entire forest community disproportionate to their actual numbers. The sight of a small herd of pygmy elephants moving slowly and quietly through the dark green of the Bornean forest is one of the more serene and ancient-feeling images the natural world offers. The Borneo rainforest is home to the oldest tropical rainforest in the world, with a continuous forest cover estimated to be approximately 140 million years old, predating even the Amazon by a considerable margin. This extraordinary antiquity is reflected in the diversity and strangeness of the flora and fauna, which includes many ancient lineages that have had an unbroken presence in this region since the age of the dinosaurs. The forest of Borneo has survived ice ages, the collision of tectonic plates, and dramatic shifts in sea level without losing its fundamental character, adapting quietly to each change while maintaining the deep ecological structure that makes it what it is. The sense of geological time that pervades the older parts of Borneo's rainforest is one of the qualities that gives it such a particular, enduring atmosphere. Many of the plants of the Amazon rainforest have developed chemical compounds in their leaves, bark, and roots that serve as defenses against insect herbivores, fungal parasites, and bacterial pathogens, and these same compounds have, in many cases, proven to be valuable medicines when isolated and studied by pharmacologists. It is estimated that approximately 25% of all modern pharmaceutical drugs are derived from or modeled on compounds first discovered in tropical forest plants, including aspirin, quinine, and many cancer treatment compounds. The catalogue of plant-derived medicines that trace their origins to the Amazon and other tropical forests is one of the quieter, but most profound ways in which these ecosystems have contributed to human well-being. The The biochemical complexity of a single mature rainforest tree, the variety of compounds it produces, the specificity of their effects, and the subtlety of their interactions, is a subject that pharmacologists are only beginning to explore in systematic detail. The rivers of the Amazon Basin are home to the Boto, or Amazon River dolphin, a large, pink-tinged freshwater dolphin that has been navigating the flooded forests and deep river channels of the basin for approximately 15 million years. The Boto uses echolocation to navigate and find food in the murky, sediment-laden water, and its flexible neck and broad pectoral fins allow it to maneuver in tight spaces among submerged tree roots and within the flooded forest during high water. The Boto's characteristic pinkish coloration, which deepens with age and in males, is caused by blood vessels near the surface of the skin and gives the animal an unusually vivid, warm appearance in the brown river water. The Boto holds a central place in the mythology and folklore of riverside communities throughout the Amazon Basin, where it is considered a creature of mystery and supernatural significance. The rain that falls on tropical rainforests does not simply soak into the ground and disappear. It is intercepted at multiple levels as it descends from the sky, first by the canopy, then by the understory, then by the leaf litter on the forest floor, with each layer slowing the water's movement and reducing the force with which it strikes the earth. This interception and slowing of rainfall is one of the primary ways in which tropical forests regulate stream flow and prevent erosion. By breaking the force of the rain and allowing it to enter the soil slowly, they keep rivers running more steadily and reduce the peaks and troughs of flooding and drought. The physical structure of a healthy rainforest, the density of its canopy, the depth of its leaf litter, the reach of its root system, is, in this sense, a highly effective piece of natural water management infrastructure that has been refined over millions of years. The sound of rain falling on a dense tropical canopy is one of the most characteristically soothing sounds in nature. A deep, continuous, whispering roar that is softened by distance and leaf by the time it reaches the forest floor. The Titanarum, Amorphophilus titanum, is a plant native to the rainforests of Sumatra that produces one of the largest unbranched inflorescences of any plant in the world. A single flowering structure that can stand over 10 feet tall and opens only once, for a period of just 1 or 2 days, before collapsing and beginning the long process of building energy again for the next flowering, which may be years away. The plant lives most of its life as a single enormous underground corm that can weigh more than 200 pounds, occasionally sending up a single large leaf that photosynthesizes for a season before dying back. When it finally flowers, the Titanarum produces a powerful, distinctive scent designed to attract the carrion beetles and flies that pollinate it, drawing them from across the dark forest floor. The Titanarum's strategy of infrequent, dramatic flowering is one of the more extreme examples of the slow, patient rhythms that govern life in the rainforest. New Guinea, the large island that sits at the eastern edge of the Indonesian archipelago, is home to one of the most diverse and least studied rainforests in the world, covering approximately 281,000 square miles, with a forest that transitions from coastal mangroves through lowland tropical forest to cool montane forest and alpine grassland at the highest elevations. The geological complexity of New Guinea, which has been shaped by the collision of several tectonic plates, has created a landscape of extraordinary variety, with numerous mountain ranges separated by deep river valleys that have allowed populations of plants and animals to evolve in isolation from one another. The island is home to more orchid species than anywhere else on Earth, and its bird of paradise species, with their extraordinary variety of plumage and display behaviors, are among the most visually spectacular birds in the natural world. The forests of New Guinea remain among the largest and least disturbed tropical forests outside the Amazon, and they continue to yield new species to science every year. The forest floor of a tropical rainforest is alive with fungi, not only the visible mushrooms and brackets that grow from fallen wood and leaf litter, but also the vast invisible mycelial networks that permeate every inch of soil and connect the roots of trees across the entire forest. These mycorrhizal fungi form intimate partnerships with the roots of most forest trees, extending the effective surface area of the roots by many orders of magnitude and improving the tree's ability to access water and nutrients from the soil. In return, the tree provides the fungus with sugars produced through photosynthesis, a transaction conducted quietly underground, involving a transfer of resources that helps sustain the entire canopy above. Scientists have proposed that large areas of forest may be connected through overlapping fungal networks in ways that allow trees to share resources and even chemical signals, though the full complexity of this underground communication system is still being mapped. The floating meadows of the Amazon, called Gromas fluctuants or floating grass islands, are one of the more unusual and visually striking features of the river system. Large, dense mats of aquatic vegetation that drift slowly on the surface of the water, occasionally covering many acres and supporting their own community of birds, insects, and small mammals. These floating islands form when masses of vegetation break free from the riverbank during high water and drift out into the main river channel, where they continue to grow and accumulate organic material over time. Fish shelter beneath them, birds hunt from their surfaces, and various plants with floating seeds colonize them as they drift, so that each floating island becomes a small, mobile ecosystem that travels slowly downstream. The sight of a large floating grass island drifting across the wide, brown Amazon in the afternoon light, with herons standing motionless on its surface, is one of the characteristic and gently beautiful images of the river. The relationship between hummingbirds and the flowers they pollinate is one of the most beautifully co-evolved relationships in tropical rainforest biology, with the shapes and colors of flowers adapted over millions of years to the anatomy and vision of the specific hummingbird species that visit them. Hummingbirds can see into the ultraviolet range of the spectrum, which is invisible to human eyes, and many flowers have ultraviolet patterns on their petals that serve as landing guides and nectar indicators visible only to their hummingbird pollinators. The long, curved bills of some hummingbird species correspond with remarkable precision to the long, curved tubes of the flowers they visit most frequently, creating a mechanical fit that ensures efficient pollen transfer. There are more than 330 species of hummingbird, and the majority of them are found in the tropical forests of the Americas, where they occupy every layer of the forest from the shaded understory to the exposed crowns of the tallest canopy trees. The rubber tree, Hevea brasiliensis, is native to the Amazon rainforest and is the primary source of natural rubber, which is produced from the milky sap called latex that flows beneath the tree's bark. Indigenous peoples of the Amazon had been using this latex to make waterproof containers, shoes, and balls for thousands of years before European explorers became aware of it in the 18th century. The latex is produced as a defense against insects that bore into the bark, flooding their tunnels with a sticky, hardening material that traps them before they can do significant damage. The rubber tree's wild homeland in the eastern Amazon is where the genetic diversity of the species is still concentrated today, in populations of trees growing in the shaded forest understory that are descended from the same ancestral population that once supplied the raw material for the global rubber industry. The Rio Homza, a large underground river discovered beneath the Amazon Basin in 2011 through the analysis of temperature data from deep boreholes, flows at extreme depth through porous rock at a pace far slower than the Amazon above it, but over a width that may be considerably greater. Named in honor of the Brazilian geophysicist who dedicated decades to studying it, the Homza is believed to flow at depths of between 13,000 and 15,000 feet below the surface, moving through permeable rock rather than in a defined channel like a surface river. Its slow pace and great depth mean that it contributes a relatively small proportion of the total water discharge of the Amazon system, but its existence speaks to the extraordinary depth and complexity of the hydrological system that underlies the Amazon forest. The idea of a vast, slow-moving river flowing silently in darkness far beneath the green brightness of the rainforest has a particular, contemplative quality. The phenomenon of bioluminescence, the production of cold, living light by organisms, is found in a remarkable variety of rainforest species, including certain fungi, bacteria, and insects. Bioluminescent fungi, such as the many glowing mushroom species found in the rainforests of Brazil, Japan, and Southeast Asia, emit a faint, steady green light through a chemical reaction involving a compound called luciferin. And while the ecological function of this glow is not yet fully understood, it may attract insects that help to disperse the fungal spores. At night, when the forest is dark and the air is still, the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi on fallen logs creates small pools of green-gold light in the blackness of the forest floor. The quiet, otherworldly beauty of this living light has fascinated naturalists and poets for as long as they have observed it. The Cerrado, a vast tropical savanna that borders the southern edge of the Amazon forest in central Brazil, is one of the most biologically diverse savannas in the world, containing more than 10,000 plant species and a remarkable variety of birds, mammals, and reptiles. The boundary between the Cerrado and the Amazon forest shifts gradually over the landscape rather than being a sharp line, creating a transition zone called the ecotone where species from both ecosystems intermingle. The Cerrado is underlain by ancient, deep soils that have been accumulating since the Cretaceous period, and many of its plants have developed extraordinarily deep root systems that reach down many meters into the earth to access water and nutrients. The seasonal rhythm of the Cerrado, wet green and lush in summer, dry and golden in winter, gives the landscape bordering the Amazon a quality of alternating moods that contrasts with the forest's more continuous and even character. The sunlight that reaches the floor of a dense tropical rainforest is not simply dim. It is filtered through so many layers of leaves and water droplets that it arrives as a diffuse, greenish glow, stripped of many of the wavelengths present in full sunlight, and enriched in the far-red wavelengths that help plants determine the direction and intensity of the light around them. Plants growing on the forest floor use this spectral information to orient their leaves and regulate their growth, bending and stretching toward any available light source with a slow, quiet urgency that is easy to observe in time-lapse photography, but invisible to the naked eye in real time. The green quality of the light on the forest floor gives the experience of standing there a particularly immersive quality, as though you are beneath a great green sea, looking up at the surface far above. This soft, filtered light is one of the most consistently pleasant visual qualities of the rainforest interior. The world's tropical rainforests contain more than half of all the tree species on Earth, and a significant proportion of these tree species are known from only a handful of individual specimens, each one a unique survivor of a species with a very restricted range. Scientists conducting forest inventories in the Amazon frequently encounter tree species that have never been formally described by science, particularly in remote and rarely visited regions of the basin. The rate at which new plant species are still being described from tropical forests, several hundred new species per year from the Amazon alone, suggests that the full botanical richness of these ecosystems remains to be fully documented. The existence of so many undiscovered plant species in the rainforest is a reminder of how much remains to be learned about the living world. The cooling effect of a tropical rainforest on the local climate is measurable and significant. The interior of a dense forest can be several degrees cooler than the surrounding open landscape, due to the combined effect of shade, moisture, and the evaporative cooling produced by transpiration. This local cooling effect creates a comfortable, sheltered microclimate in the forest interior that is quite distinct from the hot, exposed conditions of the surrounding landscape, and it extends for a considerable distance into the forest from the edge. The temperature gradient between the dark, cool forest interior and the bright, warm canopy creates patterns of air movement that influence the local circulation of moisture, drawing humid air into the forest from the edges and redistributing it through the canopy. The pleasant coolness of the rainforest interior has been noted by every traveler who has entered one, and it is one of the first physical sensations that distinguishes the forest from the surrounding landscape. The Amazon River system includes more than 1,100 tributaries, of which 17 are more than 1,000 miles long, a fact that gives some sense of the extraordinary scale and complexity of the hydrological network that drains the basin. Some of these tributaries, such as the Madeira, the Tapajos, and the Rio Negro, are themselves among the largest rivers in the world by any measure, carrying volumes of water that would make them remarkable in any other context. The tributaries of the Amazon system vary enormously in their character. Some run clear and swift over rocky beds, others are wide, slow, and brown with sediment, and others carry the dark, tea-colored water characteristic of blackwater systems. Each of these river types supports its own distinct community of aquatic plants and animals, and the points where different river types meet and their waters mingle are often areas of particularly high biological diversity. Bromeliad plants, members of the pineapple family, are one of the most ecologically significant groups of epiphytic plants in the neotropical rainforest, forming small reservoirs of water in the cups where their stiff, overlapping leaves meet the stem. These phytotelmata, as they are called, can hold from a few milliliters to several gallons of water, and they become the home of a rich community of aquatic organisms: bacteria, algae, protozoa, rotifers, mosquito larvae, aquatic beetles, and even several frog species that lay their eggs exclusively in bromeliad cups. A large bromeliad in a tropical forest may contain dozens of species of organism in its water reservoir alone, making it a complete, self-contained aquatic ecosystem perched in the branches of a tree 20 or 30 feet above the ground. The vivid green or red rosettes of bromeliads, clustered along the branches of the canopy and catching rain in their cups, are among the most characteristic visual elements of the neotropical rainforest. The Great Barrier Reef, though primarily a marine ecosystem, is intimately connected to the tropical rainforests of northeastern Queensland through the rivers that carry fresh water, sediment, and dissolved organic material from the forest to the sea. The Daintree and wet tropics rainforests of Queensland drain into the Coral Sea through a number of rivers that deliver fresh water and organic nutrients to the coastal zone, supporting a rich transition community of mangroves, seagrasses, and coral that benefits from both the terrestrial and marine inputs. The coastal strip where this forest meets the sea is one of the most visually dramatic landscapes in the world. A narrow band of sand where the dense, dark green of the ancient forest ends abruptly at the brilliant turquoise of the Coral Sea. The connection between the forest and the reef illustrates, in a particularly beautiful way, how the boundaries between ecosystems are never as sharp as they appear on a map. The Orinoco crocodile, native to the river systems of Venezuela and Colombia, and one of the largest crocodilians in the world, rests during the heat of the day in the deep shade of riverside forest, its pale, grey-green body lying motionless among the roots and shadows at the water's edge. These animals, which can grow to more than 20 feet in length, spend the dry season in river pools and deep channels, becoming more active and wide-ranging during the wet season when the rivers flood and expand into the surrounding forest. The eggs are laid in sandy riverbank nests and tended by the female, who guards them through the incubation period and carries the newly hatched young to the water in her jaws. The Orinoco crocodile, with its long, narrow snout and ancient lineage, is one of many species in the South American rainforest that seems to carry the quiet authority of evolutionary deep time in its bearing and appearance. The Borneo rainforest is home to approximately 15,000 plant species, 3,000 of which are orchids, a concentration of botanical diversity that reflects the island's complex geological history, variable topography, and the great antiquity of its forest cover. Borneo sits on the Sunda Shelf, a shallow continental platform that was exposed as dry land during ice ages when sea levels dropped, allowing plants and animals to move freely between the island and the mainland of Southeast Asia before rising seas separated them again. This alternating pattern of connection and isolation over millions of years has been a powerful engine of species diversification, as populations repeatedly formed, were separated, evolved independently, and then came back into contact. The result is a forest of exceptional biological richness, where a single morning's walk can bring encounters with more species of tree, insect, or bird than exist in entire temperate continents. The roots of tropical forest trees extend through the soil in two distinct zones: a shallow mat of fine roots that captures nutrients from decomposing leaf litter near the surface, and a deeper system of structural roots that anchor the tree and access water from deeper soil layers. The fine root mat of a mature Amazon forest is so dense near the surface that virtually all of the nutrients released by decomposition are captured before they can leach downward into the deeper soil, effectively preventing the loss of nutrients from the system. This tight cycling of nutrients allows the forest to maintain its extraordinary productivity, even on the notoriously thin, leached soils that underlie much of the tropical world. The efficiency with which a mature tropical forest retains and recycles its nutrients is one of the qualities that most distinguishes it from the much more leaky nutrient cycles of younger or degraded forest systems. The wet tropics of Queensland, which stretch along a narrow coastal strip of northeastern Australia between Townsville and Cooktown, contain the highest concentration of primitive flowering plant families anywhere in the world. More than 40 species representing plant lineages that diverged from the main line of flowering plant evolution more than 100 million years ago. Many of these ancient plants have features that are not found in more recently evolved flowering plants, and they provide scientists with important clues about the early evolution of flowers and the ecological conditions in which flowering plants first diversified. The wet tropics are also home to more than 30% of Australia's total mammal species, 60% of its butterfly species, and more than a third of its frog species. Despite covering only a tiny fraction of the continent's area, the ancient, humid forest of this region has a quality of dense, layered life that sets it apart from the drier, more open landscapes of most of Australia. The cloud forests of the Andes Mountains, which stretch along the western edge of the Amazon Basin from Venezuela to Bolivia, are among the most biologically diverse terrestrial ecosystems on Earth, owing to the extraordinary variety of elevations, aspects, and microclimates that the mountain landscape creates. As one ascends from the warm lowland forest at the base of the Andes into the progressively cooler cloud forest above, the species composition of the forest changes noticeably every few hundred feet of elevation, creating a series of overlapping forest communities, each adapted to its particular combination of temperature, humidity, and light. The incredible species richness of the Andean cloud forest is reflected in the extraordinary diversity of orchids, hummingbirds, and tanagers found here, each a riot of quiet, intricate color and form. The meeting of the mountains and the lowland Amazon at the base of the Andes creates a concentration of ecological diversity that is perhaps unmatched anywhere else on Earth. The giant otter, native to the rivers and lakes of the Amazon Basin and other South American river systems, is the longest member of the weasel family, reaching lengths of up to 6 feet from nose to tail tip. These animals live in family groups of up to 8 individuals, sharing a territory that they mark with communal latrines and defend with remarkable vocal confidence against neighboring groups. Giant otters are active hunters, chasing fish through the shallow waters of river beaches and flooded forest, and their transparent whiskers, which are used to detect the water movements made by their prey, are so sensitive that they can detect a fish's movements from several feet away. The presence of a family group of giant otters on a quiet Amazon lake, their glossy brown heads tracking movement in the shallows, their voices carrying across the water in the early morning light, is one of the more vivid and engaging wildlife encounters the Amazon has to offer. The spectacled bear of the Andean cloud forest, the only bear native to South America, lives at the interface of the cloud forest and the high grasslands above it, moving between the two. Habitats with the seasons and feeding primarily on bromeliads, palm nuts, and fruit, supplemented occasionally by small animals and insects. The bear's distinctive facial markings, which consist of pale rings or patches around and below the eyes, are unique to each individual, varying in shape and extent in a way that allows researchers who know the bears well to identify individuals by their faces alone. Spectacled bears are largely solitary and secretive, and their movements through the cloud forest are rarely observed directly, though their presence is often announced by the cracked and scattered remnants of bromeliad plants that they have torn apart to access the starchy heart. The quiet, unhurried quality of the spectacled bear's life in the misty upper forests of the Andes gives it a somewhat contemplative character among the world's bears. The Salween River, one of the longest undammed rivers in the world, flows through the rainforests of Myanmar and along the border with Thailand before emptying into the Andaman Sea, passing through a region of extraordinary biological richness that includes some of the most intact forest cover in mainland Southeast Asia. The river's long, largely undisturbed course through tropical forest has preserved a corridor of habitat that allows animals to move between the forests of northern Myanmar and the mangroves and lowland forests of the coast, maintaining connections between populations that would otherwise become isolated. The forests of the Salween Basin are home to tigers, Asian elephants, clouded leopards, and a remarkable diversity of bird and reptile species, many of which have become rare or absent elsewhere in mainland Southeast Asia due to habitat loss. The Salween and its forests represent one of the quieter and less celebrated, but most significant remaining wild landscapes of the Asian tropics. The Amazon's tributaries include rivers that have carved some of the deepest river canyons in South America through the ancient crystalline rock of the Brazilian and Guiana shields, creating gorges and waterfalls of considerable scale and visual drama that are largely hidden from the outside world within the green interior of the forest. The Xingu River, for example, passes through a rocky gorge in its middle reaches where numerous rapids and falls create a spectacle quite unlike the wide, slow rivers of the lowland Amazon. These rocky river habitats support specialized communities of plants and animals, including mosses and liverworts that grow on the mist-sprayed rocks near waterfalls, and fish species that have evolved specialized mouthparts for scraping algae from the smooth, current-swept stones. The sound of a large tropical waterfall, the deep, continuous roar of a great volume of water falling through a forested gorge, is one of the more primally soothing sounds in nature. The harpy eagle, the largest and most powerful eagle in the Americas, nests in the emergent layer of the Amazon rainforest, selecting the tallest and most accessible trees for its vast, stick-built nest, which it returns to and adds to year after year until it grows to a size that can accommodate a full-grown adult. Harpy eagles hunt primarily in the canopy and subcanopy, taking large prey including sloths and howler monkeys with their long, powerful talons, which are as large as a grizzly bear's claws. A pair of harpy eagles uses an enormous home range, and they raise only one chick every 2 to 3 years, investing an extraordinary amount of time and energy in each offspring. The harpy eagle's intense, direct gaze, framed by a double crest of grey feathers that can be raised into a broad fan, gives it an expression of powerful calm that is quite different from the fierce or agitated expressions we tend to imagine in large birds of prey. The plant family Araceae, which includes taro, philodendrons, anthuriums, and the giant Titanarum, reaches its greatest diversity in tropical rainforests, where its members grow in every layer of the forest from the shadowed floor to the well-lit canopy. Many Araceae species have evolved large, heart-shaped or fenestrated leaves that are particularly effective at capturing diffuse light in the forest understory, and some species direct rainwater along their leaf surfaces to their roots with considerable efficiency. The flowers of many aroid plants are produced within a specialized structure called a spather, a large, waxy bract that wraps around the flower cluster, and many species heat their flowers during anthesis, producing a warmth that spreads their scent more effectively and also provides a reward for the insects that shelter within the spather and collect pollen. The rich, deep green of large aroid leaves, glistening with moisture on the forest floor, is one of the most characteristically lush images of the tropical understory. The freshwater pink dolphins of the Amazon, called botas, share their river habitat with a second, smaller freshwater dolphin species called the tucuxi, which resembles a small saltwater bottlenose dolphin in appearance and behavior. The tucuxi is found throughout the Amazon and Orinoco river systems, and is more frequently seen in groups than the boto, often hunting fish cooperatively in the shallows near river beaches. The two dolphin species appear to divide their use of the river by habitat preference, the boto tending toward the flooded forest and deeper channels, the tucuxi preferring the main river and larger lakes, a partitioning that allows them to coexist without direct competition. The regular presence of dolphins in the rivers of the Amazon forest, surfacing among the reflections of the trees and the blue sky, is one of the details that gives the Amazonian riverscape its particular quality of abundance and calm. The process by which a gap in the rainforest canopy, created by a fallen tree, a landslide, or a lightning strike, is gradually filled in by new growth is called gap dynamics, and it is one of the primary mechanisms through which tropical forests maintain and renew their extraordinary diversity over time. When a canopy tree falls and light floods into the forest floor for the first time in many years, the response is rapid but quiet. Seeds that have been lying dormant in the soil germinate, seedlings that have been waiting patiently in the understory begin to grow faster, and fast-growing pioneer species rush upward to fill the space before the more slowly growing, but ultimately taller trees can establish themselves. Over the course of several decades, the gap slowly fills as successive waves of species arrive, grow, and eventually are replaced by the species that will form the mature canopy. The entire process is a kind of slow vegetative competition, played out over time spans that dwarf individual human lives. The Maya and other Mesoamerican civilizations that flourished in the tropical forests of Central America and southern Mexico developed sophisticated systems of forest agriculture that allowed them to maintain large and complex societies in an environment that European observers later dismissed as unsuitable for large-scale farming. Milpa, the traditional system of rotating cultivation used by Maya farmers, combined the planting of corn, beans, and squash with deliberate management of the surrounding forest, creating a mosaic of cultivated fields and managed secondary forest that maintained soil fertility and biodiversity across large areas. The forests that still stand in parts of Yucatan, Belize, and Guatemala today contain the remnants of Maya agricultural and hydraulic infrastructure, raised fields, reservoirs, canals, and garden beds that speak to the deep integration of human activity and forest life over many centuries. The ruins of Maya cities, slowly being reclaimed by the surrounding forest, are among the most atmospheric testimonies to the long relationship between human civilization and tropical forest. The largest single organism in many tropical rainforests is not any individual tree or animal, but the mycorrhizal fungal network that connects the roots of the trees across the forest floor, potentially linking individual trees that are many hundreds of feet apart into a common underground network. Some researchers have proposed that these fungal networks can facilitate the transfer of carbon, water, and chemical signals between trees, and that larger, older trees may serve as hubs from which resources flow to smaller, more shaded neighbors. The full scope of this underground communication and resource sharing, how far it extends, how much material is transferred, and how consistently it occurs across different forest types, is still being studied. The possibility that the forest is, in some meaningful biochemical sense, more connected and communicative than it appears from the surface is one of the more quietly provocative ideas in contemporary forest ecology. The rivers of the Guiana Shield, including the Essequibo in Guyana and the Mazaruni and its tributaries, run in clear, amber-colored water over beds of ancient white sand and polished granite, and they are among the most scenically beautiful rivers in South America. The clarity of the water in these rivers, a consequence of the geological stability and low weathering rate of the ancient shield rocks, allows the sunlight to penetrate deeply, creating pools where the sandy bottom and the dappled reflections of the forest canopy are simultaneously visible. The forests that line these rivers are dominated by tall trees with straight trunks and relatively open understories, giving them a spacious, columned quality that contrasts with the dense tangle of more disturbed or more fertile forest environments. The combination of clear water, white sand, and tall forest gives the rivers of the Guiana Shield a spare, clean beauty that is distinct from the opulent productivity of the lowland Amazon. The relationship between tropical rainforests and the global climate extends back to the deep past, to periods in Earth's history when the configuration of the continents was different and tropical forests were more widely distributed than they are today. During the warm, humid Eocene epoch, approximately 50 million years ago, tropical or subtropical forest covered much of the area that is now the temperate zone, including parts of Europe and North America, and the global climate was warmer and more stable than it is in the present era. The gradual cooling of the Earth's climate over the past 50 million years, associated with the decline in atmospheric carbon dioxide that accompanied the rise of the Himalayas and the spread of grasslands, progressively restricted tropical forest to the narrow equatorial belt where it persists today. Understanding how the rainforests of the past shaped the global climate of their time is one of the ways in which the study of ancient forests illuminates the relationship between vegetation and climate in the present. The walking palm, Socratia exoriza, is a medium-sized palm native to the rainforests of Central and South America that is notable for its cone-shaped network of stilt roots, which support the trunk above a small clear area of ground and give the palm a slightly elevated, seemingly mobile appearance. The stilt root system allows the tree to remain stable in the soft, wet soils of the forest floor, while also allowing it to adjust its position slowly over time by producing new roots in the direction of better light and letting old ones die back. A process that is so slow as to be imperceptible in real time, but measurable over months or years. The pale, smooth stilt roots of this palm, rising from the leaf litter like the legs of a great slow-moving insect, are one of the more unusual and visually striking features of the Central American forest floor. The walking palm's particular combination of elegance and quiet persistence makes it a somewhat emblematic figure of the patient rhythms of rainforest life. The Loess Plateau of China and the highlands of Southeast Asia were once covered in vast areas of subtropical and tropical forest that have been replaced over thousands of years of agricultural expansion, leaving only fragments in steep terrain and protected areas. The forests that survive in southern Yunnan province of China and the montane forests of Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar represent the remnants of what was once a much larger continuous forest system connecting the tropics of South and Southeast Asia to the temperate forests of East Asia. These fragment forests are home to a remarkable diversity of plant and animal life, including many species with both tropical and temperate affinities that reflect the long climatic gradients of this region. The ancient trees that survive in protected forest patches in this part of the world, majestic banyans and strangler figs in temple groves, ancient oaks and laurels in montane reserves, carry in their gnarled, moss-covered forms the quiet history of a once much larger forest world. The Sunderland hotspot, which encompasses the tropical forests of Borneo, Sumatra, the Malay Peninsula, and the surrounding smaller islands, is recognized by conservation biologists as one of the most significant centers of biodiversity on Earth, containing more plant species per unit area than almost anywhere else in the world. The extraordinary botanical richness of this region reflects both its geological antiquity and the complex history of sea level change that has repeatedly connected and separated the islands, driving the evolution of new species and preserving ancient lineages. The forests of Borneo alone are estimated to contain at least 3,000 species of trees, more than exist in the entire continent of North America, and the diversity of smaller plants, fungi, and invertebrates that depend on this tree community is correspondingly immense. The accumulated biological wealth of the Sunderland forests, built up over tens of millions of years of relatively stable tropical conditions, is one of the most remarkable legacies of life's long history on Earth. The sounds of rain in a tropical rainforest change character as the water moves through the different layers of the ecosystem, arriving as a steady roar in the canopy, softening to a patter in the understory, and reaching the forest floor as a quiet drip and trickle, with individual drops falling from leaf tips at long intervals long after the rain itself has stopped. The acoustic transformation of rainfall by the forest structure is one of the quietest and most continuous demonstrations of the forest's physical presence. The way its billions of leaves intercept, redirect, and slow the movement of water through the air. After a heavy tropical rainstorm, the forest floor continues to drip and trickle for hours, fed by the water stored in the canopy foliage and released gradually as the leaves drain. The sound of this slow, post-rain dripping, in a forest that is otherwise quiet and still, has a quality of gentle, unhurried regularity that is among the most deeply restful sounds in nature. The tropical rainforests of the world are not simply collections of trees and animals, but are among the most complex, ancient, and continuously evolving systems on the surface of the Earth. Places where millions of years of biological history have accumulated in the form of intricate ecological relationships, specialized adaptations, and chemical and genetic diversity that we have barely begun to catalogue. Every large tree in an old-growth tropical forest is a small world in itself, hosting hundreds or thousands of species of epiphytic plants, insects, fungi, mosses, and lichens in the ecological space it creates. The forest as a whole is more than the sum of its parts. It is a system that produces its own climate, cycles its own nutrients, and maintains its own internal stability through a web of interdependencies that stretches from the canopy to the deep roots, and from the mycorrhizal networks of the soil to the flying rivers of the sky. To spend time in a tropical rainforest, or even to read about it slowly and quietly, is to be reminded of how much of the world's living complexity persists, patient and silent, beyond the edge of what we can easily observe. And that brings us to the end of our journey through Earth's most extraordinary living world. The rainforests have been quietly breathing, growing, and thriving for millions of years, long before us, and hopefully long after. If this video brought you a little closer to the wonder of our planet, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves nature as much as you do. Until next time, Take care of yourself, and take care of this beautiful earth.